Lost Art with Andrew Cox, retired Marine Master Gunnery Sergeant. TheLostArt.podbean.com. Get some merchandise and help support the podcast and getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Now on all major podcast platforms. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Be a guest. Tell your veteran story. Discuss your veteran business or organization. Email thelostartwithandrewcox@gmail.com. Andrew Cox, a Teal Valhalla Project Ambassador. See the project story at tealvalhallaproject.com. Thank you for tuning in. Please enjoy the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans, The Lost Art with Andrew Cox.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we'll be having a My Veteran Story with Marine veteran Scott Grimmer. I've got Mountain Man, Marine retired Scott Grimmer. Scott, how you doing? I may not have you. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I should
All
be
right.
good. I'm on Starlink.
Oh, well, it's probably on my end, to be honest with you. So hopefully I caught the intro in mind. But Mountain Man Scott Grimmer here, Marine retired. How you doing?
Great. Good to have you. Good to be on your show.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to hear all about it. You were telling me about right before we started about your pet eagles, bald eagles you got right there by your house that like to have a conversation or two. So hopefully we'll get to hear some of that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, let's kind of start at the beginning. Like, where did you grow up? What was that like? And then how did you kind of join the Marine Corps and get in the military service?
Sure. So I was born in Juneau, Alaska, right here where I retired. And I grew up here in Juneau and moved down south to Wrangell, Alaska, which is in between Juneau and Ketchikan. If anybody's familiar with the Panhandle over here, it's pretty big. The Panhandle's about the size of Florida, with the population of about 27 to 30,000 people in
Wow.
that distance. Um, so uh, uh, as a teenager, my parents moved down to Western Washington area, Seattle, Olympia area, and I met my wife in high school in Central Washington, and yeah, nothing significant. I played sports in high school. I did football, wrestling, did a bit of baseball, did martial arts. I did several different types of martial arts, taekwondo, karate, did Greco-Roman wrestling, things like that. And
Nice.
mostly did a lot of working. My parents put me to work doing a lot of different things. So I did masonry work, stone laying. I did laying linoleum and carpets, things like that. I also did roofing. And after graduating high school, I wanted to go do some mechanic work. And so I went to college to learn a mechanical trade. And the I ended up, well, around that time, 9/11 happened.
Mhm.
And I was still in school, and my cousin had came back. He was with First Recon Bravo Company over at Pendleton, and what used to be there, but it used to be in Margarita, Camp Margarita, uh,
Right.
but they don't have Recon there anymore. But he came back and came back home on leave and talked to me, and I was convinced that I needed to join. And
Yeah.
without asking my wife about it, I went to the recruiter's office and signed papers and everything, and then came home and told her what I'd done. And she agreed that that was not a bad deal, and it was something that she would support. And Luckily, I have a very supporting wife that has always supported me, and um, yeah, especially while I've been gone and all the different times that I've been gone away from home. And that was just the beginning. So after I joined the Marine Corps, I went to boot camp, and I guess there wasn't really anything significant about boot camp. I can't remember a lot. I've had a lot of TBIs. I can't
Yeah.
remember a lot of stories and details, but I do remember that I modeled a lot of the things that I did when I became a drill instructor after my first enlistment off of what my drill instructors did. And unfortunately, they did a lot of heinous stuff, and so that's what I ended up doing. And I got in a lot of trouble, but I didn't get in too much trouble. I can say that now because I passed the statute of limitations with the UCMJ.
Yeah.
So I guess I could say those kinds of things. But yeah, that was boot camp. I went to
So let me ask you a question there. Now when you went to boot camp, how old were you? Because you went to college, so
I was 20, about to turn 21. I was 21
okay.
when I went into MOS school.
Okay, so you're a little bit older. And as far as you can remember, was it a culture shock for you doing that, or was it just kind of like, oh yeah, it is what it is?
I had imagined that everything was like, I guess I didn't really have expectations. And so I had imagined that it was like the worst thing imaginable. Like, I thought that it was like, I hadn't seen Full Metal Jacket at the time. And so that's not
Yeah.
what I thought it was like. But and so I just got secondhand stories from people and things like that, and all of them told me not to expect anything, and I would be fine. And I don't know. I guess I didn't have any expectations, and since I was a little bit more mature than some of the other guys going in, a lot of the things that were going on, and games and discipline things, I didn't have to deal with getting jacked up because I was pretty mature and didn't do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was. I was and so the drill instructors made me a whiskey locker recruit, because one of my drill instructors came in all the time because he had a Volkswagen Bug, and he had all kinds of electrical problems with it. He knew I was a mechanic because they'd ask people what they did before they came in. And so I ended up fixing by virtue of talking with him on and off while I was on fire watch, like every other night or whatever. And he would come in and ask me what this problem was. And I'd go, well, did you check this? And like, pretty sure I helped him install his entire wiring harness and figure out his carburetor and everything. But I
So you
remember
basically helped him build it up.
yeah.
That's nice.
And in third phase, he drove it to work. And I remember looking out, and he like drove it in and like was like, it like made it really obvious. And I was like, yeah, that must be it, but I thought that was pretty fun.
That is awesome. Well, that's good. You put your knowledge that you learned in college, you put it to work there in boot camp. That's good.
Yeah. But yeah, I signed a contract to be a mechanic. And so I ended up going to motor team mechanic school in Camp Johnson and
Hmm.
Camp June, North Carolina. And all I remember was it was like the easiest education I've ever had, because they basically tried to cram an associate of science and automotive degree into like 2.5, 3 months, which you can't do. And at the time, I had like, I think I had 3 of the ASE certifications, which were current. And so, I mean, I was real sharp on all that stuff. And I mean, I didn't want to like highlight myself because I had learned in boot camp that was a bad idea, and so I didn't
Yeah.
like do too good at school. But it was really easy to go through and do all that those things. But I mean, those skills ended up paying off. Have paid dividends throughout the years. Having those hand skills,
Absolutely.
But yeah, I went to my first duty station in Camp Pendleton, and I don't even remember what it was like, 03 or 04. And they had just came back supporting the initial Battle of Fallujah. And I heard all the war stories and everything. And we were super short-handed because I went to my first unit was first TSB. They changed it from TSB to CSSG to FSSG. I think they call it CLB now. But yeah,
They
was
need
like
to pick a name and stick with it. That's what they need to
it's a
do.
logistics unit. And I remember at the time, it was crazy. Our sergeant major, the battalion commander was a marathon runner, and the sergeant major had a 300 PFT.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and like they would skunk everybody going on runs. And I just remember there was one in particular, and we would PT like 5 days a week. We didn't do like the Monday, Wednesday, Friday like other people got to do. And they would take us out running the hills in Camp Pendleton every day. We would go at least 3 to 5 miles. And because I wasn't much of an idiot, my staff sergeant at the time pulled me in and he was like, you're not much of an idiot. Because like the first month I was there, I became mechanic of the month because I was just fixing all of their stuff because I knew how to fix stuff. And I didn't use any technical manuals or anything. I just knew how to fix it, right? And so he was like, yeah, you're not much of an idiot. If your PFT and stuff wasn't so bad, we could put you on a board. And so I was like, well, what do I got to do? And he was like, well, you should PT at least twice a day, 3 times a day. And so in the morning, we would run. At lunch, I would run to the pool, swim like 500 meters and run back. And then in the evening, I would go to the gym and lift weights. And I did that and raised my PFT from, I don't remember what it was. It was like a 250 something to it was like a 293 or a 295 in like 3 months.
Whoa. You were working
like
it hard, man.
Yeah, from my boot camp PFT score. And yeah, I got put on a meritorious board, and I went on the meritorious board, and it was like the full gambit where we had like a wall locker inspection.
Oh wow.
We had 2 uniforms. Yeah, we had 2 uniform inspections. You got inspected in camis. You got inspected in the seasonal uniform, which was Charlie's at the time, with like the short khaki shirt and ribbons and stuff. And we did drill in the motor pool, and they did like guidon manual, which I knew nothing about and was sure that I had completely bombed. And the last thing they had we ran a PFT, and then the last thing they had us do was they had us report in at the battalion to do a board. And I had been studying the BST battle skills book at the time, thinking, oh, okay, I'll memorize this and then I'll be good, because they're supposed to ask questions out of the BST. None of the questions they asked were out of the BST. Sorry, this is my dog Bruce, my bloodhound.
That's okay, man. He's welcome.
He's out and about. And so I went through the board, and they asked some BST questions, like what are Sorry. What are the
That's good.
5 different types of grenades? What
Yeah.
what like what is this color mean on a map? Things like that.
Right.
And then they started asking weird questions like, where do you or in on top of the general's flagpole, what do you find inside the ball on top?
Right.
And then one of them, and then the sergeant major asked me, what color was his wife's underwear? And I was like, I don't know, and I'm not going to find out. That's what I said. And I think that must have been the right answer because I was like the last person in. They pulled everybody back in, and they had everybody except for me walk out. And they told me that I won the board. And so that was my experience with getting promoted to corporal.
Very nice.
Within, I think it was a month or two after getting promoted, I got on a slate to go on deployment to Iraq, and I can't remember what it was. They had all of the deployment mechanics filled. And so they asked for people to volunteer, and I was a go-getter and was eager to deploy. And so I volunteered to go to do whatever. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I ended up getting attached to a security company that was attached to CLD 7 or FSS2, whatever they called it at that time. It was the guys, the logistics guys from 29 Palms. And then we was attached to RCT 7, which was in the Western Al Anbar at the time. And what I ended up doing for my first deployment was they showed up. We was a security platoon, and they was like, well, you're a machine gunner. And I was like, I hadn't fired a machine gun, barely any, in MCT, and didn't remember anything. And so I went into the armory and did assembly, disassembly, going through immediate remedial action on the weapon systems and everything over and over and over again until I had it down. And I remember going on like first couple combat patrols, and like I was like super nervous that I was just gonna do something wrong, or like something was gonna happen and it was gonna be my fault. And but it ended up not being that bad of a deployment. I remember going all over the place. We ended up hitting a lot of IEDs. We ended up finding about 10 times more IEDs than we hit. But it was every deployment I did was a summer deployment, and it was sweltering hot. I remember that year, and somebody had one of those global index things, and it maxed out on the bottom because it only goes to 120. And somebody had a digital thermometer, and the outside air temperature on one of the patrols was 142. Ooh. And I was like, this is so miserable. And at the time, the gunners, they was using napalm IEDs, and so the gunners had to wear these monkey suits that were like a frag suit, and it was like, imagine like a frag vest, but like it goes from your ankles all the way up to your flak jacket, and then you have the flak jacket on, and then you wore flak jacket arms on top of that, and then because it was like they was using napalm, everybody had like a fire resistant balaclava on their face. And oh man, I remember that day I was just sweating buckets, and it was absolutely crazy. But it was, I just remember everybody was hanging the socks with water bottles, like a wet sock with the water bottle. I don't like drinking cold water. And so That was kind of weird, but yeah, I just remember like I probably sweated 3 gallons in one
Yeah.
day. Um, but yeah, it was that was one of the experiences on that deployment. Um, oh, I remember my birthday on that deployment. That was one that stuck in my head. We was on a patrol back from Haditha Dam.
Hmm.
And if everybody remembers the shenanigans with Haditha, like we were like coalition forces and U.S. forces were not very well liked in the Haditha area, and we got blown up a lot. And like the road going south to like I don't remember what it was, Takatam or something, was
Yeah.
like the place south of that. Like it was just potholes of like IED blasts through the whole road. It
Wow.
was it was it was there it was like driving around and you like it was like swerving back and forth to like avoid potholes, and like some of them
Right.
were massive, like you could fit a Humvee in one. And we was on our way to coming back from Haditha, and ended up stopping to check out an IED. And
Hmm.
as soon as that happened, we got caught in a complex ambush. They started hitting us with mortars. They started shooting at us. And shortly after that happened, they're like, "Oh, go, go, go!" And they're trying to get people to move. The tire and everything was on fire, and the hub was just glowing red. And they were like, we can't move this. And I mean, like, it was completely loaded down. You can't drag something like that. You're not going to leave it. And so I was like, is anybody going to do something about this? Like, I'm just listening to the chaos on the radio, and it's a couple of vehicles in front of me. And so I'm like, whatever. You know what? Like, I told whoever it was that was sitting in the A driver's seat, "Hey, get up in the machine gun turret right now." And I jumped down there, grabbed my M16 and ran down to this vehicle and opened the door. And these guys like were so lost. It was like these blank stares on their face. And I was like, "Do you have your SL3 gear in your seat?" And they had no idea what I was talking about. So I like
Oh man.
opened to move, and I like opened the seat and I started grabbing stuff. They didn't have all their SL3 gear. Luckily, uh, they had uh, they had like the little things so you could do a limp home on it. It basically it's like you compress the spring and it lifts the axle off of the ground so it doesn't touch the ground. And they didn't have anything, and so I had a crescent wrench, like a 16-inch crescent wrench, and so I was slowly cranking this up by using a crescent wrench. And once it started like getting weight loaded because the tire was
Hmm.
trying to lift off the deck, I had no breaker bar or anything to try to like get it off the ground. So I used the buttstock of my rifle and I shoved it through the freaking crescent wrench and was just cranking on this thing and got it above the where the ground was so that it would hover. And like on the last crank, it shattered my buttstock completely.
Oh wow.
And so I'm thinking, well, I really can't use this for a whole lot as we're getting shot at. And I just, as that whole thing was happening, I can just look off in the distance and I see the mortars walking themselves up. And they're just getting closer and closer. And it looked like they was just coming for me, right? And I'm just like, I got to move faster. And it was like 120 plus degrees outside. And I was just like, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to have to move as fast as I can. And, you know, adrenaline's pumping through your body and things like that. And yeah, but anyways, ended up getting it moving. They like ended up just going off-road with everything, and we got out of the area. The security element in the front ended up pushing around to freaking go engage, and it de-escalated within like 5 minutes of me being able to get it to move. But yeah, that was my birthday on my first deployment. That was a cool time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's one heck of a birthday. I'm
yeah.
not sure anybody can top that one. That's pretty good.
Um, so we came back from my first deployment. Oh, one of the things I had like a running tally of how many patrols we did on the deployment. It was like a 10-month deployment, and we was all counting like the number of patrols that we had been on. And in that time frame, I was just counting. It was something ridiculous, like over 200, or not 200, 170 combat patrols in 10 months.
Wow.
It was like it was almost like every day, every other day. Like it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was crazy. And there was some times where, you know, there would be so many casualties in one of the other security platoons that we would be on. We would have no breaks for like a week because we was covering down on all their stuff, because they had to have time to like regroup and situate themselves. And so
Right.
yeah, it just, when that kind of stuff happens, it just, like you got to pick up the pace for other people, and we had no problem with it. um but yeah, it was a heck of a deployment. But we came back. I got promoted to sergeant. I was back for 3 months. I volunteered to go on a transition team, and so I got attached to a transition team. We did training for a few months, and we was in charge of training uh, uh, Iraqi military and Iraqi border patrol in the like northwestern Al Anbar province, up
Right.
by I can't remember where it is. It's the town that's like right by Al Qaim, where uh, uh, Jason Dunham was deployed.
Right.
So we went up, we went out there, and that was it. Every day was interacting with the Iraqis. We was on this small cop that we were, us and a small contingency of like a cook, a guy that ran everything, a guy that ran comm, and we had like I think it was a platoon of Iraqi army that also was on the camp that we were at. And so we interacted with them quite a bit, and I got to learn a lot of culture and understanding for the Iraqi people. And it is completely different in that area, you know. Okay, but and so the it was kind of nice that I was able to get deployed in that particular area, because in that area, if you go up north of that, it's Mosul or Mosul,
Hmm.
and like almost all of the people that live there are Kurdish. They're
Mm.
they're not Sunni or Shia, and the Kurdish people are completely different than everybody else that lives in Iraq. They,
Hmm.
they walk and talk very Western, like
Wow.
Americans. They like to drink, they like to smoke, they enjoy conversations and are open to conversations. And they very much despised the previous regime in Iraq and were super motivated to engage in anti-terrorism in the country to be able to work and do their part. And they're very motivated. I remember specifically one of the guys that we had out there. He was a platoon sergeant for one of the forts that was out there. And this guy was old. Like, when I think old, he was probably my age now, but like, he looked old. And before that, he was Egyptian Special Forces. And he had trained in karate, and he would do katas every morning. And then he would take his platoon out on a 3-mile run in boots and heels every day.
Wow.
And those guys were in super good shape.
Yeah.
And,
especially in that heat, man.
Oh, yeah. A lot of that area was close to the border. And so we did a lot of night patrols because that's when things were most active. Because people aren't dumb enough to try to cross like a lot of open terrain during the daytime. It's super obvious. And it was a pretty well controlled border out there. But so we did a lot of patrols at night, and I remember there was one, we would go out and do patrols with them. So me and 2 other guys would rotate, like 1 off, 2 on, with doing patrols every couple of nights with them to like train them how to do patrols, how to react to, how to do different combat maneuvers from, the ground, from your feet. And so it was crazy because I was reverting back to like MCT information that I needed to get brushed up on real quick, and I was the expert on all of a sudden. And so I was teaching them how to go through and do patrolling. And so one of us would be with the scout element in the front, and one of us would be with the element leader or squad leader, like just kind of shadowing him and telling him what things to look for, what hand and arm signals to do, how to control, what was going on with the patrol. And there was one night patrol we did where it was 0% illumination. And if you've ever been in zero loom with cloud cover, you can't see in front of your face. And like NVGs don't do a whole lot. And we had like, I don't remember what they were. They were the monocular ones that like go down, right? Yeah. And it's like the monocular. And they were about 1,000 times better than what our counterparts had. But like we were, I don't know how we made it, but they had a dog, and they treated that dog like crap, but they would let that dog go on patrol with them, and the dog would lead the patrol.
Wow.
Because the dog knew the routes that they would take. And so I was with the scout element, and I remember we just followed the dog. And I would recognize, different, things as we was going through. And, it was just like, oh, yeah, okay, we're on the right track. And we just followed the dog for the patrol. Nothing happened during that time. But it was kind of funny that, we just ended up following the dog for, the patrol so we could get back. But
yeah, it's a good thing that a dog was there.
Yep. Yeah. There was, I got to tell this story real quick. Almost started an international incident with Syria on that deployment when we was on the Euphrates River. So the Euphrates River cuts in and goes into Syria at the top of the Al Anbar province. And there's a bunch of up until that point and the year before, I don't remember who it was. They did this thing called the island hopping campaign because the terrorists were using the river, the Euphrates River, to smuggle and transport explosives, ammunitions, and weapons. And at first, they was using boats and things like that to like try to get around on. And then after a while, they started getting smart because they'd get caught. It was super easy to see somebody in a boat just zipping down the river, and it was like, okay, what are you doing? And so, like, the Iraqi army guys would just get in their boat, speed boats, and zip over there real fast, and find out what was going on. But so they started putting them in barrels and floating them down the river, and then they would use the current, and they would end up on these islands, and then they would go back to those islands and pick the stuff up, right? And so the island hopping campaign was going through and basically clearing those islands out and stuff like that. And there was one island that obviously was not cleared out because half of it was in Syria, and it was right in the middle of the Euphrates River. And so we had this great idea, because it was still happening, that like a lot of that was happening on that little island. And it was, if you ever been to the Euphrates, it turns from barren desert into like a tropical paradise oasis immediately within like hundreds of yards. And that's what it was like. There was like fig trees and different types of lush vegetation and reeds and stuff on the island. And we had done an operation to cut a line across that island and basically like mow everything from one side to the other, which is about 150 meters, and basically concertina wire it so that it was a secure island. And we get over there, and we had hired like, I don't know, it was like 50 locals that was in a village nearby. And we'd gone through, and we was basically tried in security. There was like a trail that went, there was like 3 trails on our side, the Iraqi side of the island, and there was one main trail, and we found a donkey with a cart on the island. Somehow a donkey got on that island. And so we had gone through and did everything and had everybody cut all the reeds down and all that kind of stuff. And we stand up and put triple strand concertina wire across the whole thing. And just as we're about to wrap it up, I'm looking around. I'm starting to like gather tools and gather the people and everything, because it's a logistic thing. There's only one place to get off of that island because the reeds are so tall and stuff. And so the only place you could get a boat was like quarter mile down the island on that little trail that's like this big with like 8-10 foot reeds on both sides that are thick. And so we start getting everybody together. And I remember looking, and there was this one old guy that was like a supervisor. He didn't do anything, but I remember looking around, and I looked at him, and he was looking around. He was smoking his cigarette, and then he looks back and forth, and he flicks it right into this dry hot mound of reeds.
Oh no.
And that thing went up in smoke like instantly. It was like this massive blaze, and that fire started spreading aggressively. And so we're like, okay, everybody get to the other side of the island now. And by the time I was like, it was myself and one of my buddies that was trying to gather everybody. We were staying behind to make sure everybody got off and got out of that area. And so by the time we got on that middle trail, the entire freaking side of like everything was torched, and it was like just this massive blaze coming towards us, and it was within like 50 feet. You could just feel the heat coming, and
Oh my
we have
God.
everybody running down this trail. And I just remember as we're going, there's people running, and I look behind us, and the donkey is freaking running full bore right at us. And like we try to get out of the way, and then it's just plowing people over, and people are like trying to like just falling into the reeds, getting stuck and stuff. And around that time, once it starts getting into where they did cut, they start having cooked off rounds go off.
Oh
And,
no.
and so the Iraqis thought that it was the Syrians shooting at them. And the Syrians thought that it was the Iraqis shooting at them. And so they're starting to shoot back and forth at one another. And in the midst of that, like this fire is like just torching and going crack because everything is dry on that island.
Yeah.
It's just like you can hear like explosives cooking off and just causing big booms, and which is engulfing the fire, making it hotter, spreading it faster. And we are just flying down that island, trying to get everybody off. There's like we're loading twice as many people that fit in a boat onto a boat. And we get to the dock, and we're putting every last person in there. And then they leave. And then I look around with my buddy, and we're the only people left. And we had a couple of poly buckets, and we're like, crap, is the boat going to come back for us? And the boat was not coming back for us. So we put our weapons, broke them down real quick, and put them in the poly buckets, and like use the poly buckets as a flotation, and swam across the river. And when we got in the water, I could just feel the heat, like like when you're really close to a bonfire, how it's
Yeah.
like hot on your skin. That's how it was. And we just ended up swimming for it, and it was not a problem. But that was, yeah, I just
How
remember.
far how far would you say you were swimming?
Oh, it was not far. It was maybe 100 meters at most.
Okay.
But I mean, it was a hard, strong current.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the fact that I already was a pretty good swimmer, I probably would have been way down current. But I wouldn't have been, like by the time I got to the other side. But yeah, that was quite the experience. And I just remember the major that was in charge of our transition team. He probably got his butt chewed out by the freaking base CEO over at Alkheim, and because it basically started an international incident, and he was in charge of it. But yeah, that was a great time.
Oh my God, that's a great story. I like it. Wow. So let me ask you this. So that was a 10-month deployment, if I'm not mistaken, is what you said. And I can't tell if you're here or not. It cut out.
Yeah.
Okay, you're there. Okay.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was a 10-month deployment, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right after during the deployment, I was doing my reenlistment stuff, and I went through, did my reenlistment, and the monitor didn't want to release me, and the unit was going back on another deployment within a very short amount of time, and I had volunteered to go to drill instructor school, and
Okay.
it went up. They denied my request to go to drill instructor school, and so I used it as my reenlistment incentive for my first
Ooh,
reenlistment,
good.
and got a seat. And 3 months after we got back, I was at DI school.
Man, you know
Yep.
what? God bless your wife. I mean, that's 2 deployments back to back, and then pretty much another, 3-year deployment.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it was like.
listeners out there, if you're struggling, need some help and anything like that, the VA has some great resources. You can always reach out, dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those are going to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you. I know Scott cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there and maybe you're not struggling, but you might see somebody else, just as a reminder, go out and talk to people that you serve with, ask them how they're doing. And if they do need help, then please assist them in their time of need. All right, with that, Scott, one last time, thank you. I appreciate it. To all the listeners out there, stay motivated, change your socks.